Hey everyone, Stacks here, checking out X-Force number 1 as Marvel continues to roll out these new Dawn of X titles. And this one, Benjamin Percy, the writer, Joshua Cassara on art, and Dean White is your color artist. And I'll say up front, I may be a little biased on this one because when I saw the team, this is the one I was most excited about. Mostly because of Wolverine, Colossus, Beast, Domino. But you also have the intelligence side of it. And that's really what's going to be interesting about this. You basically have a organization that's going to have the intelligence agency side of things, it looks like, and you're going to have the operations side of things. So it's pretty interesting to me. I will say of all the titles, this one's definitely going to be more violent, more gritty. Just looking at the team, kind of what you expect, I think. You have Excalibur kind of dealing off with the magic stuff. You have Marauders dealing with kind of more lighthearted stuff with Teeny Howard writing. And then you have the main X-Men title, which is still interested to see where that one goes. That leaves New Mutants, which I think is taken off into the Shi'ar Empire. And then Fallen Angels, which I have obviously is next week. So I'll check that out obviously as soon as it comes out. Anyways, I say all that to say that I think this book is probably going to be one of the most popular out of this Dawn of X kickoff. Enough about that, let's get into the book. The book begins with some dialogue that's really setting the stage. The guy sitting here with the knife drawn, his hand out, saying, "There is us and there is them. To make certain none of us or none of them, we will begin with a purity test. All it requires is a little blood." And they have these green vials that they're dropping the blood into. Then what it's doing is it's checking for the X gene. And what you have in the next panel is zoomed out. You have this entire room of what looks like world leaders masked that are all taking this purity test. Of course, you have one individual looking left and looking right who's a little bit hesitant in all this. That person is immediately cued on by this enormous thug. So realizing she's been spotted, she starts pulling off her gloves and says, "All right, I suppose if it's gloves off, it's blood you're after?" And she absolutely, as he reaches down and grabs her shoulder, just jams the knife right to the back of his hand. And at that point, of course you know it's Domino, and she's just going off. She's taking it to everyone in the room up until the point where that same hand from that giant muscle-bound Hulk just grabs her by the back of the neck, picks her up, and slams her head first down back on the ground. And at that point, our white-suited leader here just says, "To make certain none of us are one of them, we require blood." From there, we jump to Krakoa, where Beast is out just for a Sunday stroll, and he is suddenly set upon by this crazy Krakoan boar beast thing. Fortunately for old Hank, Wolverine's hanging out nearby, and he's actually hunting this thing, we find out. Jumps down, but Hank tells him, "Look, stop, just let him go, let him be." Now, Beast, of course, is interested in this animal because he's trying to figure out why is it on the island, is it a product of the island, and all that. Wolverine is interested in it because he's been hunting it. In all honesty, he's probably interested to see what it tastes like. And here Wolverine delivers one of the best lines of the book. He says, whatever that thing was, you didn't see it coming because you felt sheltered. That's what Krakoa does, makes everyone feel safe. And when you're safe, you're soft. From there, we jump into a breakdown of the security features of Krakoa. And they talk about aquatic detectors, things they have such as seaweed and plankton. They also talk about an atmospheric detector like fungal spores, stuff like that in the air that it helps them so they can pick up any kind of aerial breach. But basically, it's letting you know, look, there are sensors to protect from both land, sea, and air. And at the center of all this security is, of course, Black Tom Cassidy tied in to Krakoa. And one of the first things we have happen is they detect something that isn't right, and it's actually the arrival of the Marauders. The Marauders are arriving, and they are bringing in a bunch of refugees that have been injured. Jean Grey is on the scene pretty quick and can immediately detect the amount of pain coming from the ship. We find out that it wasn't just bullets and tanks, it was chemical weapons as well. And we also find out that Colossus was there. He was helping organize the resistance or the extraction on the ground from the Russian side, and he's in bad shape. From there, we jump to Krakoa, where Professor X is leaving through a portal, and he arrives in Sokovia. He's immediately greeted with a glass of champagne, which he just, without even thinking, throws back. And when you're looking at it, you realize there's something in the drink. From there, we jump back to Krakoa, where in the healing gardens, the healer is working, trying to get all these refugees in Colossus, get them patched up. The problem he's having is most of these individuals are unconscious, so he brings Jean Grey in to to talk to them telepathically and figure out where are they hurting. But when she does, she sees flashbacks. She sees how horrible the situation was in Russia, and then you get the scene of Colossus running with this little girl and just taking fire. And she finally pulls off and says, "Look, I can't tell you where they hurt because they hurt everywhere." From there, we jump to a civilian flight that left out a soul, and what you have is the breathing things drop, people start breathing them, and they pass out. And what you have is a group that completely hijacks this flight. The group that's hijacking the flight suits up. You'll notice these white strips on them. I'll bring them up in a little bit. And you have basically what looks like the old, Weapon X or maybe Weapon Plus helmets. I mean, I don't know if it's a homage to it, but it looks really cool. Anyways, they jump out, they go straight airborne, Halo style, and are assaulting Krakoa, the 4 of them. Now, this is picked up by those monitors we talked about earlier. It's picked up, but for some reason, they're detecting that it's Domino that's coming in. They know she's been missing, but there hasn't been any telepathic communication with her at this point. Now, both Sage and Black Tom say that, look, it's Domino, but Black Tom's saying something doesn't feel right, and for some reason, Krakoa is acting really glitchy right now. And Professor X has made it back at this point, and Black Tom is trying to tell him, look, something doesn't feel right. Something is twisting in my gut, and at that point, you have another shot of the team leader saying, "Stay centered on the target." So they have somebody they're after. This is Assassination Attempt. And while Black Tom is sitting there explaining his concerns about security, you have these guys jumping in. They're black and white parachutes opening up. Remember that, because it's going to come up again. And Professor X is basically blowing off Black Tom at this point. Wolverine finally caught whatever it was he was hunting, because he's sitting there chowing on something when he looks up and sees these parachutes dropping in. From there, chaos just breaks loose. This team hits the ground, it opens fire, and they start killing mutants. They have their target though, and they're after Professor Xavier. Black Tom goes to work and he's putting up a defense. The rest of the team is just in shock. Oh no, everyone is just charging to the gunfire. Wolverine, no, just charging in. Back to Black Tom, he's throwing everything he has at making sure the professor gets out of there. But we find out that there's a couple things going on. First of all, these guys got some kind of psionic block because the professor cannot track them, so he's making a break for it. But he knows he's the target, and he's clear that I can't run because I'm the finish line. Finally, Wolverine arrives at the epicenter of all this chaos and is immediately engaged by one of these assassins. Fortunately, Beast is there, jumps on, takes out the assassin, and Wolverine, of course, is right back up, ready to go for round 2. At this point, Jean flies overhead and is pointing him in the direction of Professor Xavier. She's saying, we were stupid and slow and careless, and it's time to be smart, swift, and violent. This can never happen again. Back where the fight started, Black Tom has gotten the upper hand on one of the attackers when suddenly he's blasted out of nowhere, and this guy actually his conversation is really interesting because he goes, "Your anger and surprise, I just don't understand it. Did you really not see this coming? Did you really think we weren't going to fight back?" And he's right. How could they not see this coming? And now they're all in a panic. They're all rushing to Professor Xavier to try to save him. And one of the assassins draws down. Blam! And at that moment, everyone just shocked. From there, we jump to Sage, where she's trying to convince herself that this isn't possible. She's calling to everyone, trying to confirm what she is seeing on the screen, and begging them to tell her that Krakoa is wrong. And the final shot is of Cerebro sitting there with a hole right through the X, because, this dude was well trained. He did not miss. So obviously this book is going to leave a whole lot of different things to talk about. Have they gotten to the point in the resurrection protocols where other telepaths are able to upload and download the conscious into these husks? Pretty good assumption that Forge has another Cerebro unit that whoever needs to can don it and resurrect Professor X at this point, you would think. Of course, you got to ask yourself the question, what kind of response is this going to elicit from the mutants? Now, worth mentioning, I've said I was going to mention this earlier, so I'm going to bring it up now, is the white strips on these assassins that they're wearing, and then their parachutes as well, the black and white. Now, I didn't pick this up, but my buddy Wes over at Thank You Critical, who you need to go check out his channel if you haven't, I'll leave the link down in the description. If the reason that the sensors that were mentioned earlier, the ones with the pollen and everything, the reason they were detecting Domino is because those strips are pieces of Domino's skin that they've taken and placed over them, like Hannibal Lecter style. And as disturbing as that sounds, it really talks to how dedicated these people are, and I don't say dedicated in a good way, but how dedicated to the cause they are, and that they are going hard against these mutants. With an act like that, they're making it very clear that there is no middle ground here. It is us versus them. Anyways, guys, just let me know what you think. Is Professor X coming back? Is this issue of really any consequence, or is it just they'll bring Professor X back in 2 issues and it's not gonna be a big deal? Overall, this was by far my favorite issue to include the X-Men, the main title issue. The action in this was good. It was, I mean, the characterization was fabulous as far as with Wolverine. I prefer this Wolverine much more so than the Marauders Wolverine, who's sitting there giving grocery lists to Kitty Pryde. I do think Professor X will be back basically because of his nonchalance throughout this whole thing. He did seem panicked there at the end, but I mean, he's jumping through to Sokovia. He's doing all these things, and surely he wouldn't be doing that if he was still the only Resurrection Protocol capable individual on Krakoa. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for today. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Go check out Wes over at Thinking Critical. If you haven't checked out his channel yet, absolutely go subscribe to that. Great news, great content, and a great dude, and a fellow veteran. So make sure you go support him. And guys, that's all I got. Leave a comment, leave a like. And if you're not subscribed, guys, sincerely appreciate it. That's all I got. Real Comic Stacks out.